In the heart of a nation holding its breath, the man closest to the president, the sworn protector who stood as a human shield, was secretly preparing to pull the trigger. The truth of why he made this choice is far more shocking than the act itself, a story of manipulation so deep it could break a country. To understand the unbelievable truth behind this ultimate betrayal, make sure you subscribe to our channel and join our community of truth seekers, as we uncover the stories that the world needs to hear. In the sun-drenched corridors of power in Burkina Faso, a palpable sense of change was breathing new life into the very air the people inhaled, a fragile yet powerful hope embodied by one man, Captain IBRAHIM Traoré. His presence was more than just a political reality. It had become a symbol of a long-awaited dawn, a promise that the future could be forged by their own hands, free from the shadows of the past. The weight of millions of aspirations rested squarely upon his shoulders, a burden he carried with a quiet determination that inspired both fierce loyalty and, in hidden corners, a simmering and dangerous resentment from those who wished to see this new era fail. This precious national hope was entrusted to the hands of an elite few, the men of the Presidential Guard, who were meticulously selected for their unwavering courage, their absolute loyalty, and their willingness to lay down their lives without a second thought. They were the final line of defense, a silent, disciplined fraternity whose daily ritual was a dance with potential danger, constantly scanning crowds and anticipating threats that the common eye could never perceive. Each member was a fortress of dedication, their commitment to the president's safety woven into the very fabric of their being, a sacred duty that superseded all personal desires and fears. Among these stoic figures was a man named Amadou, a guard whose calm demeanor and professional efficiency made him a model of the perfect protector, someone who had earned the implicit trust of his superiors and the president himself. He moved with unpracticed grace, his eyes perpetually sweeping his surroundings, his posture a testament to years of rigorous training and an unshakable sense of purpose that seemed to emanate from his very core. He was often positioned closest to the captain, a place of immense honor and responsibility, a living testament to the faith the leadership had placed in him and his abilities. Yet, beneath this polished veneer of unflinching loyalty, a subtle but persistent turmoil had begun to churn within Amadou's soul, a quiet storm that no one around him could possibly detect. Sometimes, a fleeting flicker of profound conflict would cross his eyes, or a nearly imperceptible tension would tighten his jaw, small tells in a masterful performance of control that betrayed a deep and agonizing internal struggle. This hidden battle was a secret he guarded even more fiercely than the president, a growing fissure in the foundation of his sworn duty. The very fate of Burkina Faso's revolution was therefore balanced on a razor's edge, resting not only on the vision of its leader but on the integrity of the men sworn to protect him, men like Amadou. The idea that this human fortress of trust could ever be compromised was unthinkable, a horrifying possibility that seemed to belong to the realm of fiction, yet the seeds of betrayal were already being sown in the fertile ground of one man's tormented heart, threatening to upend the destiny of an entire nation. The first signs that something was dangerously amiss were almost too subtle to register, appearing as minor, explainable security lapses that were quickly dismissed as unfortunate coincidences or simple human error. A motorcade route was unexpectedly altered at the last minute due to a supposed blockage that never materialized, or a sensitive piece of intel was slightly delayed, just enough to create a window of vulnerability that thankfully passed without incident. These small ripples of disruption were whispers of a larger, more sinister plot beginning to unfold just beneath the surface of daily routine. Behind the scenes, powerful external forces, threatened by Burkina Faso's newfound independence, were actively working to destabilize the nation, seeking to reclaim the influence they had lost by exploiting any weakness they could find. These shadowy entities, along with remnants of the old, corrupt regime, understood that a direct confrontation was too risky and instead chose a more insidious path, the path of psychological warfare. Their strategy was to find a crack in the president's armor, not in his defenses, but in the loyalty of the men who formed them. Their target became the seemingly unbreakable Amadou, for they had discovered the one thing in his life that he valued more than his duty, his family, who were now living under a veiled but constant threat. He was carefully isolated and fed a steady stream of sophisticated disinformation, a twisted narrative that painted Captain Traore not as a liberator, but as a tyrant who was secretly selling out the country to new masters. They warped his sense of patriotism, telling him that a decisive, drastic action was the only way to save his nation and protect his loved ones from a terrible fate. The constant pressure and insidious lies began to erode Amadou's resolve, poisoning the well of his loyalty with a potent cocktail of fear for his family and a distorted sense of patriotic duty. The whispers of his handlers became a deafening roar in his mind, drowning out the oath he had sworn and the years of genuine respect he held for the captain, pushing him toward an abyss of betrayal he never thought he would approach. He was no longer a protector. He was being meticulously groomed and weaponized, a pawn in a deadly game he couldn't fully comprehend. The moment of his final, tragic decision came during a quiet, sleepless night, as the weight of his impossible choice crushed down upon him, forcing him to cross a line from which there could be no return. He chose what he was led to believe was the lesser of two evils, sacrificing his honor and his sworn duty in a desperate, misguided attempt to save both his family and his country from the manufactured threat presented to him. The plot was now in motion, and its unwilling instrument was the very man who should have been its greatest obstacle. The stage for the terrible act was set during a public ceremony, an event designed to celebrate the nation's progress and bring the leader closer to his people, creating an atmosphere of jubilant security. It was precisely this environment of perceived safety that the conspirators chose for their moment, knowing it would be the time of maximum shock and confusion, a moment when the guard's proximity to the president was at its most intimate and unguarded. The air was thick with celebration, a perfect camouflage for the cold-blooded betrayal that was about to unfold in plain sight. From Amadou's perspective, the world had shrunk to a terrifyingly narrow tunnel of vision, the vibrant colors of the crowd blurring into a meaningless backdrop as his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. The feel of the cold metal hidden beneath his uniform was a sickening reality, every fiber of his being screaming in protest against the monstrous task his mind had been conditioned to perform. He was caught in a horrifying battle between the loyal soldier he had always been and the terrified, manipulated man he had become. Then, in a sudden, shocking blur of motion that ripped through the festive atmosphere, the attempt was made, a desperate lunge, a swift and violent action intended to be lethal and final. But in that critical split second, the deep-seated reflexes of the other guards, men who were his brothers in arms, proved faster than his own conflicted betrayal. They reacted with the instinctual speed of true protectors, intercepting the threat and neutralizing Amadou before he could complete his devastating mission. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of chaos and disbelief, the joyous sounds of the crowd replaced by screams of panic and the urgent shouts of the security detail. As Amadou was forcefully subdued and disarmed on the ground, his colleagues stared down at his face, their expressions a mixture of horror, confusion, and a profound sense of personal violation. The captain was safe, physically unharmed, but the invisible shield of absolute trust had been irrevocably shattered, leaving a wound far deeper than any bullet could have caused. A heavy, suffocating silence descended upon the leadership as the reality of the situation sank in, a chilling question hanging in the air that demanded an answer. Why? How could one of their own, a man who had shared their barracks, their meals, and their sacred oath, turn against the very person he had sworn to die for? The betrayal was so absolute, so personal, that it defied all logic and reason, signaling a threat far more complex and dangerous than a lone, disgruntled assassin. The interrogation of Amadou was not a simple process of extracting information. It was the careful unwrapping of a broken man's psyche, revealing layers of fear, manipulation, and profound regret. He was not the cold-blooded monster his actions suggested, but a tragic figure, a pawn whose life had been systematically dismantled and reassembled by unseen masters to serve their dark purpose. His confession, when it finally came, was not a defiant roar, but a choked whisper of a man who had lost everything, including his own sense of self. The unbelievable truth finally spilled out, a harrowing tale of a sophisticated blackmail operation where his family's safety was used as a merciless bargaining chip, with their lives hanging on his compliance. He revealed the steady diet of lies he had been fed, the forged documents and deepfake videos that proved, the president's treachery, all designed to convince him that his act of assassination would be an act of national heroism. He was a puppet, and he only realized the true identity of his puppeteers when it was far too late. This shocking revelation transformed the entire investigation, shifting the focus from a single traitor to a vast and insidious conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of the country's old guard and extended to powerful foreign interests. The assassination attempt was not just an attack on one man. It was a carefully orchestrated act of psychological warfare, designed to decapitate the revolution and install a puppet regime by turning the nation's most trusted symbols of loyalty against themselves. The true enemy was not the man who held the weapon, but the shadowy network that had placed it in his hand, a network that thrived on chaos and sought to extinguish the light of African sovereignty before it could truly ignite. They had not accounted for the possibility of failure, nor had they anticipated that their pawn would expose the entire game, revealing the terrifying lengths to which they would go to maintain their grip on power and resources in the region. When the full story was presented to Captain Traore, his reaction was not one of rage or a desire for simple vengeance, but one of profound sadness and steely resolve. He saw in Amadou's betrayal a reflection of the larger, more desperate battle his country was facing, a fight not just for political control, but for the very soul and mind of its people. He understood that the real war was against the invisible chains of manipulation, and this understanding would shape his response in a way no one expected. The news of the assassination attempt, and the deep conspiracy behind it, could have easily shattered the fragile morale of the Burkinabe people, breeding paranoia and fear, which was precisely what the plotters had intended in case of failure. Instead, the revelation of how far their enemies were willing to go had the opposite effect, acting as a powerful catalyst that galvanized the public in a massive, unified wave of support. They now saw their leader not just as a politician, but as the living embodiment of their struggle against unseen, powerful forces, and their resolve hardened like steel. The fate of Amadou became a symbol of the new leadership's character. Instead of a public execution for treason, which many would have demanded, he was given a long prison sentence, an act that acknowledged his crime while also publicly recognizing him as a victim of a much larger scheme. This decision was a powerful message of wisdom and strength, demonstrating that the new Burkina Faso was a nation of laws and mercy, not one driven by blind retribution, a choice that further solidified the people's trust in their leader's judgment. The Presidential Guard underwent a period of intense and painful reorganization, a necessary process to rebuild the shattered trust that was the foundation of the unit. The incident forced them to look inward, to strengthen their vetting processes, and to reinforce their bonds of brotherhood with a renewed sense of purpose and vigilance, ensuring that they were not just a physical shield, but an ideologically impenetrable one. The betrayal of one had, ironically, made the entire unit stronger and more fiercely loyal than ever before. In time, the story of Amadou's tragic fall became a national legend, a cautionary tale told to new generations about the steep price of revolutionary change and the cunning nature of neocolonial warfare, which often fights its battles in the minds of men rather than on a physical field. It served as a permanent reminder that the most dangerous enemies are often those who promise salvation while secretly plotting destruction, a lesson learned in the most painful way possible. Ultimately, the attempt to extinguish the flame of hope in Burkina Faso only caused it to erupt into a roaring inferno of national determination, forging a stronger, more resilient nation from the ashes of betrayal. The people, with Captain Traore at the helm, were now more united and more committed than ever to their path of self-determination, fully aware of the shadows that lurked in the dark but completely unafraid to continue their march toward the light of a truly sovereign future. If this incredible story of betrayal, resilience, and the fight for a nation's soul has moved you, and if you believe that these stories of strength deserve to be told, please show your support for our channel. Your subscription allows us to continue bringing these powerful narratives to light. Give this video a like so that more people can learn about the true challenges faced by leaders who dare to dream of a different future. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you believe is the true price of leadership in a world of hidden agendas? Your engagement helps our community grow.